That's one of the biggest misconceptions is that we're like, someone may be like, build your brand, and they're talking about aesthetics.
Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Successful Stylist Academy podcast. I'm your host, Ambrosia Carey. We have a special guest today, and I'm really excited to announce this person because I have gotten to know this person for quite a while, actually, in this career. And I'm sure you guys are going to know her as soon as I start. Well, I'm just going to tell you, it's Nina Kovner of Passion Squared. And I met Nina, gosh, I want to say probably close to 9 or 10 years ago, I want to say, and I did attend one of her workshops, a branding workshop. And Nina, I would love to just give you the mic, give you the floor, and explain to all of our listeners your journey, how you got started, and where Passion Squared came from.
Thank you, Ambrosia. It's awesome to be here. And honestly, Passion Squared's turning 13 in March.
Whoa,
So I have
that's
a feeling
amazing.
that workshop was probably maybe 11 years, probably 11 years ago. It's so wild. That's so wild. It's great to be here. So my journey started like many people listening to this podcast. I went to beauty school with that, fire in my belly and that passion. And I was super fortunate to assist all through beauty school. So I worked as what we called back then, which is so cringe now, but I was the shampoo chick. That was my title. It was the greatest job in the world. 6 busy hairdressers. I mean, booked and busy, and just me. We had 6 shampoo bowls. It was just wild. And so I learned so much, about the salon while I was going to school, just through that experience. And that's the salon I ended up actually working at as a hairdresser. But while I was in beauty school, we went to the New York IBS, my second month of beauty school, on a field trip because I went to beauty school on the East Coast. And the minute I walked into the Javits Center, which is still where the show is today,
It is.
I saw this group of people on this big stage, and I'm like, whatever they're doing, what I want to do that. Like, I want to be them. And it was literally my second month of beauty school. I never left that booth the entire show by myself. I modeled for them, everything. Like, I was sold. So my career in education started really while I was still in beauty school. And after about a year working in the salon as a hairdresser, I became an educator. And that led me quickly to the local distributor who needed help. And I became a brand manager like a year and a half out of beauty school. I didn't even know what that meant, except I needed to make sure that the brand was represented well and that the salespeople had all their tools, and built an education team to make sure that the salons were supported. So I got pulled into the business side of the business very early in my career. And that's where I stayed until 2009. I worked in sales, and I worked in marketing, and ultimately I was the global head of marketing, education, and events for a major hair care brand, which is still out there today. It's called Paul Mitchell. I mean, I'm sure people have heard of it. So I left in 2000. So I left in 2009. It was not my plan to ever leave. I was there for life. However, my life had turned a different direction. And for my own mental health and wellness, I had to leave. So in my mid 40s, I was like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I'm still here for a reason. And so I was already really passionate about the social and digital space because as a marketer, I already, started to study it and understand it. And I really saw potential for small businesses, salons, being able to be empowered by these new tools. And so that's kind of how Passion Squared began. Once I started that, I realized how little folks understood brand strategy and brand storytelling. And that's when I brought that into the fold. And that's, right around when I met you. So yeah, that's how I got here.
Man, you hit the ground running. It's pretty remarkable just hearing how that story unfolded for you. But, sometimes I think people are designed for specific things, and it just seems like this was such a natural fit for you, Nina. I feel like this was a good segue just right into a question that I have about branding in general. What is a common misconception of what branding is?
Such a loaded question.
I know.
Such a loaded question. And I'm going to really do my best to make it make sense. So, the first thing is really about terminology because of course language is everything, right? When we look at how we communicate with clients versus how we speak to each other, the language is different, and we always want to kind of understand the language first. So um when I look at brand brand strategy, brand storytelling, um it is about the story. It's the brand story. All starts with brand story. Branding tends to lean towards brand identity, which is the aesthetic of the brand, the logos, the fonts, the colors, those types of things. And so I believe that that's one of the biggest misconceptions is that we're like, someone may be like, build your brand, and they're talking about aesthetics.
Yeah.
And see, brand identity or branding is meant to help tell the brand story. It is not the brand story. And so the aesthetic, the brand identity, the branding comes from the brand story. So the first step is brand story. Then we design around that, including obviously content and literally everything else. So I believe that that's like one of the biggest misconceptions. I believe that another one is like build your brand on Instagram. It's like that's marketing, right? That's the tactic to build relationships, to find new clients, to if you're an influencer, educator, whatever, whoever you're trying to serve. That's not your brand. That's a function of your social media marketing. And so those just a few examples of where I see some of the confusion, and I don't know where it came from. I'm not really sure where it came from, but what I do know is our industry has never really had or understood real brand fundamentals, which is why that became such a big part of Passion Squared as I was working with our clients in our community. And I'm like, we could be talking about content. And they're like, what should I post? I'm like, well, let's talk about your brand story. Well, what should my client agreement say? Well, let's talk about your brand story.
Mm,
Well, what services should I offer? Well, let's talk about your brand story. I mean, how should I price my services? Let's talk about your brand story. What product line should I use in my salon? Let's talk about your brand story. And so as that began, I'm like, wait a minute, like nobody understands this. And this is the foundation of literally every decision we make. And this is why there's sometimes so much confusion and kind of chaos, because it's like, yeah, if we don't have, I mean, we know this, right? If we don't have a foundation, then we're
yeah.
kind of like, oh, well, so and so said this, or like, I heard this and that sounded cool, so I'm going to go do this. And so we're all over the place. And then the comparison thing, and it just becomes like chaotic.
Mm, yeah, the comparison thing for sure. I mean, I can see where the separation can happen. And I also can see where somebody doesn't really understand necessarily the difference between branding and what your brand is specifically. And so there's a lot of miscommunication, I think, that I'm seeing, but
Yeah.
also maybe just those who are not quite experts in it per se, but they built like a really beautiful branding aesthetic
Yeah.
and someone was drawn to that, and then that
Yeah.
comparison, I mean, you talked about comparison, like, we could probably go on for hours about that,
Yeah.
but I would love
Yeah.
to know from you, like, if for our listeners who are listening in, if they're trying to figure out for their business, and when they're, like, looking at the elements of their branding, what parts of that should they be focusing on for their business? Like, creating that message for their ideal client, I guess.
Well, it all starts with brand story. So I, as someone that has built many brands, business brands, personal brands, service brands, product brands, I really had to kind of figure out I believe the simplest way to approach this. So this is the framework that we use at Passion Squared with our clients. So it starts with brand purpose. What problems are you solving? Because I mean, this is all about solving problems, right? Any business that exists is here to solve some sort of problem. So what problems are we solving? And then brand promise is how are we solving those problems? That would be process, that would be experience, that could be like a proprietary consultation, that could be all sorts of things. Um, who are we solving these problems for, right? So that goes to that target audience. So we see going back to this like branding confusion, sometimes we're like, people see branding as identifying a target audience, and that's one part of, you know, many. So a little out of context if it doesn't stand alone. And then how do we solve those? What products, what solutions do we have? So the products and services. So an example would be brand purpose. Let's say that we want to create a brand that speaks to people that really value healthy hair and really value a natural approach to beauty. So the problem that we're solving is folks that are frustrated with the damage that they're experiencing when they go to the salon for services, or folks that cannot find anyone that understands scalp health and whatever. So that would be the problems that we're solving. And then how we're solving them is we are going to create this amazing proprietary scalp health um, system, including head spa and scalp facials and blah, 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 blah. And we are going to partner with what we believe is the healthiest. And I know I say that in healthiest hair color, but we are going to do techniques and have within our consultation system a way to avoid excess damage, let's say, right? Another how could be the beverages and snacks that we serve. Another how could be that we do holistic health. You know, we prioritize holistic health and we do educational workshops or whatever. And then the services and products, again, aligned with that would be whatever those things are, right? The healthy hair color experience and the, you know, scalp facial, what a blah, blah, blah. So yeah, so I mean, it sounds it's simple, but it's not easy because typically what we see is we can just go to a website, right? Go to someone's about section or like, we're passionate about hair.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And it's like, first of all, your brand story speaks to your brand people, right? Your audience. So you need to talk to me. Like, it's not about you. And even if you're a personal brand, it's not about you, right? It's always about who we're serving. And so really shifting that mindset, because we tend to look at ourselves, right? It's like, I love this and I love that. And it's like, that's cool. However, to really build a relationship, I mean, you all are the experts at this relationship building. We have to be interested in what you care about, what you value, what you believe. So that's really the foundation. That's the first step. And then from there, we price, we create our services, we choose the products we're going to carry, we build our agreements, we build our training system, we hire to that, we fire to that, we create our content around that and our captions around it. It's literally. And so when we have that clarity, it absolutely simplifies decision making, right? In alignment with the brand. When we get into comparison, it's like, yes, personally, comparison is, you know, debilitating. But from a business perspective, when we understand brand, we're like, oh, yeah, like I can admire what they do, but that's not related to my brand.
Right. Yeah.
So I can get out of that business comparison. Be like, yay for them. And that also is not my brand.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. It's all those details I think that we kind of skip over. And one of the things that I hear that's most common is that, well, we take every kind of client, and that's great, but it's not that you're denying those clients, but having that brand identity behind the story of your business helps you know who it is that you're speaking to. And I love that you worded it that way. If you go in the about page, I mean, that's such a great way to even sum it up. If you go into your
Yeah.
about page, who is it that you're serving? I once heard somebody say something along the lines of your audience or your client is the hero. If you make your client the hero,
They
like
are
if
the
you
hero of the story.
a hero of
Yes,
the story, yeah. I
absolutely.
I
And
really like that.
the most powerful narratives and storytelling is when we're speaking to an audience of one, going back to they are the hero. And when you said all types of clients, they can be all types of clients. However, there is something they share.
Hmm.
So it's not traditional demographics per se. I'm not a big fan of those. I think they're kind of outdated and not relevant, except in unique circumstances. Of course,
Hmm.
there are specific brands that are designed for people like me that are the over 55 set, but generally speaking, we could have all kinds of clients, but they share something in common, right? Common
Hmm.
values, common visions, what they value, those types of things. So, again, we're still defining it, but it doesn't have to be like this singular thing, but there is something they share.
I like thinking of things in that way too, where there can be different types of people, but there is a commonality that everyone shares. So I guess if we were getting a little bit deeper into this, are there any sort of exercises or actions, I suppose, that any of our listeners can do to help define that branding message to their branding strategy?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it all starts with brand story, and that's where people get blocked. Even our own clients, trust me. Like, I know this is not, I said it was simple, but it's not easy. But once people figure it out and take the time to figure it out, then the whole world changes, like literally, right? So, going back to defining your brand story, what problems are you solving? How are you solving those problems? Who are you solving problems for? And then what solutions do you have to those problems? One great exercise in helping you answer those questions is listening to your clients. Because typically, you're going to, if we really listen, we're going to pick up on things, right? Things that
Yeah.
they share. We could even read our Google reviews or Yelp reviews and start to pick up on themes. They are the kindest. I've never been to a kinder salon. I've never felt so cared about. I've never felt so heard. I've never felt so beautiful. I've never had anyone be able to do XYZ. This is a place to go if you want XYZ. We can ask questions. What do you love most about your experience? What do you value in this experience? Why did you choose this salon? So we can get clues by asking questions and really listening, which can help us in getting clarity around that foundation, that brand story.
I like that idea where you're really just taking a moment to sit back and listen, because I think it's so easy to get caught up in the daily things and like
Yes.
thinking about what's next. And then now all of a sudden you're in the space of what you're wanting. And so sometimes I think just slowing it down a little bit and really taking a moment to listen. I think even people I talk to, sometimes they forget to go into their reviews. So I'm glad that you even brought that up too, just to like go in and make sure, like, are you getting those reviews? And if not, this might be a good time to, I mean, we've talked about marketing so many times with you guys, but that's a very simple way of marketing your business, just getting that in front of your clients and asking them to give a review and extend that compliment into that online space and see what it is that they're saying. So I love that you're echoing that for that reason too, just to be the extension of that story. So I'm curious, in the digital age, like if we're just applying it to our website and our social media and all the stuff that we're doing now, just the millions of hats I feel like everyone has to wear for their business now. For a salon branding strategy, I suppose, how crucial is that to have for that portion of it? Because I have heard before where people see something specific and then they go into the business and it's nothing like what they see on the
Ah,
outside. So, and it can be kind of a hard, it could be harsh. It could turn people off. And so I want to hear your take on this.
yeah, that's really interesting. You said that. That kind of goes back to putting putting all the energy into branding and brand identity and not into actually the foundation, which is brand story, because that dictates your experience, right? So your online experience needs to be consistent with your offline experience, and your offline experience needs to be consistent with your online experience. So that just has to be, right? I mean, digital is critically important, right? Digital is critically important. There's something that we call the awesome client journey, and it starts when we as consumers, we do this every day. We have an intent. I want something, right? Anything. I want a haircut. I want a coffee. I want a movie. I want a flight. I want something. Search. Then we go look for it. Now, when we started this awesome client journey in 2012, it's very different than it is today, right? There's so many more places to search,
Yeah.
whether that's voice or social or, digital or AI, whatever. Then we discover it, right? So we land on it for however we got there. Then we're going to take an action. It's either going to speak to us, right? It's going to draw us in, and we're going to click or book or call or follow or like or subscribe or purchase or whatever, or we're going to bounce, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is how we live today. So what's critically important is that, again, it all starts with brand story, because that determines everything. When we're clear on that, then we can optimize all of our pages to be aligned and consistent with the experience we deliver, which means those referrals that we're getting, for the most part, are going to be a fantastic fit, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm curious too, like you were telling us earlier on about the difference between your brand story and your branding. And I have seen something happening where every couple of years someone redoes their branding and they change it completely, flaunts, logos and fonts and all of
Or
that.
flaunts.
Flaunts. I've been doing that a lot lately, just putting two words together, making
I
them
mean, it's efficient, right?
yeah, we're gonna flaunt it. So logos and fonts and all those things and changing it completely. What advice do you have about that?
I advise absolutely not. Let's give some context though. So, if you decided that you're ready to really get clear around your brand story, you want everything to be consistent and aligned, you want to simplify your decision making, you're tired of comparison and chaos and confusion, then maybe once you build your brand story, you may decide that, you know what? This even name, right? This does not align with the story, right? This does not help tell my story. I am going to rebrand. So that would be a rebrand. That could be as simple as a font change. It could be as, major as a logo, font color, and even name change, right? And decor, and go offline with that, decor and whatever. However, what typically happens, and I know this very well because remember, I was in marketing and I worked with a creative department to, create all the products, all the programs, all the promotions, all the materials, all the event, all the everything. And we get bored as humans, right? So we're
Yeah.
like, you know what? I don't like those colors anymore. You know what? Like, I'm bored with that. Or you know what?
Yes.
And the thing we have to remember is that a big part of brand value and differentiation is the repetitiveness, is the recall,
Hmm.
is the identity, right? So you look at, I mean, when I drive by your salon, it's like it's part of the community. It's like part of the culture. It's literally like it. And if you were to completely change it, I maybe wouldn't even recognize it. I maybe would like drive right by it. I wouldn't, whatever.
Yeah.
So while we may get bored, that doesn't mean the consumer's bored. And the amount of time, energy, and money it takes to build back up that recall
Yeah.
is nobody has that kind of time or
That's true.
money or energy, right? And so, yes, if it is not aligned, but no, if we're just like, I saw on TikTok somebody said like orange is in, it's like, great. Like then make orange part of your an accent in your content or something. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
like go buy an orange lamp. Like do not change your entire brand identity, because then we're looking at costs and energy. So we have to update literally every digital asset. We have to update every offline asset, printing. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So I consistency. We build trust. We build recall. We're differentiated. One of the biggest challenges I see with branding
Mhm.
is I love that everyone loves Canva. We've been using it since the day it launched. However, when you don't have clarity around your brand story or have a brand identity, everything looks the same. And that's what's been happening the last few years is people are taking templates straight off Canva
Yeah.
with no font changes, no color changes, no nothing. So there's no differentiation. Everything looks the same. So as a consumer looking for a new salon, I'm confused. Like, I don't even know, like everything's the same. So that kind of goes back to brand value, right? It's
Mm.
like, how are you building that value into your brand? It's all part of it. The identity, the storytelling, the everything, the everything.
Yeah, like you, for instance, Nina, like I recognize your video right off the gate because it's always set up exactly the same, black and white. I know, and it's true. I think you said something really big there is the trust factor. Because I do feel like change when you're kind of like pulling somebody, it's almost like pulling the rug from underneath someone. They're not really expecting it.
100%.
And then they don't, I don't know. I think there is some psychology to that. There must
Oh,
be some,
there's it's all well,
yeah.
first of all, it's all psychology,
Uh,
right? Because I mean,
yeah.
why do we make the buying decisions we make?
True. Okay.
Right.
I
It's
like
all
that.
emotional. Yeah, it's all emotional for the most part. But there absolutely is a psychology. We don't like change, even hairdressers, by the way. For the people that create all this change, let's be honest, we don't like change.
It's true. It's really true. I know. Trust me, I know. Like
So,
even
I
with the
mean,
yeah, even the
we're
stylist in my salon.
consumers, right? So like I walked into, I mean, a great example. I have the best Trader Joe's. I know that like there are people that are like, I know I have the best Trader Joe's. I have the best Trader Joe's. And Ambrosia, you obviously know this because we're neighbors, but there's this cute little neighborhood town called Garden Home. It
Mhm.
is like the cutest thing I've ever seen. And that's where my Trader Joe's is. Anyways, so I walked in there a few weeks ago and I go every week. I go, once a week. I'm consistent. I'm loyal. I'm consistent. And I walked in there a couple weeks ago and the bananas were not where they belonged. Like they moved the effing bananas.
Oh
And it took
no.
me a minute.
Not the
It took me,
bananas.
I know, it took me a minute. And I'm like, what? I got a little, like anxious. Like,
Yeah.
what happened? Like, what did you do? What did you do? So when we look at our own behavior as consumers, whether it's your grocery store moved stuff around or whatever, and I understand why they do that. Again, psychology. However, when it comes to brand identity, that is about building that trust, building that consistency, building that differentiation, that recall. And we may be bored. Trust me. I mean, our logo that, was designed back in 2011. I look at it sometimes and I'm like, and I'm like, no, why? Like, I've put
Yeah.
13 years into this and
Right,
it
right.
means something. It
Yeah.
means something and there's value there, right? So I'm not going to mess with it. I'm not messing with it. So we can get creative
Yeah.
by all means with all different types of things. That's a big decision when you change your entire brand identity.
Well, I like that you said that. And as a matter of fact, like you even using the Trader Joe's example, it just goes to show that when you get more consistent with your brand and people know what to expect from you, that they become loyal. And ultimately, that's what we want to do with our business is we want to take less work to put into other things and make it about the experience and just having better like holistic balance in our life and all those
Yeah.
things. Like the reason why
And
we even got into business to begin with.
100%.
Yeah.
And when we focus on lifetime client value, which means the amount of joy, happiness, referrals, and revenue that a client brings you over the lifetime of your relationship, when we really focus on lifetime client value, then we are going to have that type of clientele. Um, that is something that would look like maybe how we decide whether we're going to charge a late fee to. If a client has been with you for 5 years and has sent 50 referrals per year and visits 12 times a year and brings you joy, just think about that. So
Yeah.
agreements are a two-way, right? A two-way relationship, a two-way responsibility. However, we're human. And so that goes back to your brand promise. And really looking at lifetime client value. I believe that some of the advice out there today is not great when it comes to not being nice or kind, not being kind and not considering lifetime client value. And that's not healthy for a business long term, because it's a lot less energy, time, and money to retain a client than it is to go find a new one.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That in a nutshell. I just think that that's something that everyone should keep in mind. Be careful who you listen to, be careful whose advice that you are going to take for your own. And I think also just using your own best judgment when it comes to that
Yeah.
too. Like
Yeah.
trust yourself more than you're
Yes.
going to trust other
100%.
people.
And
Yeah.
again, when you have clarity of brand, you have that compass, you have that foundation to listen to advice and say, you know what? That doesn't fit with my brand.
Yeah. I like that. And
That's the decider, right? That's a decider. Like people can say, obviously have advice and say, but we have to have some sort of filter, some sort of GPS to say, interesting. You know what? That doesn't fit with my brand.
I like that. Thank you so much, Nina. This is all really good advice. And like, even I've taken your class several times, and every time I talk with you, it either reaffirms something or just makes me think of something else. And so, like, it's just that part of the brain where we need to exercise that. And so,
Yeah.
I think that just it goes to show why you're such a necessary beacon in our industry. Like, I really just appreciate you so much. So, thank you for spending your time with us today. Can you share a little bit about how everyone can find you? And I'll definitely leave that in the show notes for you
Yeah.
guys so you can find it easily.
Yeah. Passionsquared.net is our website, and on the socials at Passion Squared.
Awesome. All right. Well, everyone, Passion Squared, you guys, please just do yourself a favor. Instead of spending so much time on Canva, instead of spending so much time listening to these branding experts who are on TikTok who haven't really like built up enough, it's like it's great to see how they're running their businesses and listening to their advice, but instead of doing that, look at your own journey. And if you need help with it, reach out to Nina. That's the reason why she has an entire business dedicated to this. So trust me, I've gone to her several times. I've always found value out of it. I'll leave her information in the show notes. And Nina, once again, thank you so much. And
Thank you,
so great to chat
Ambrosia.
with you. All
You
right, guys.
too.
Well, don't forget, let's dream big, set goals, and let's take some action on those things that we need in our lives. And thank you so much, everyone. I'll see you all next week.